Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Monday Night Wars. What a show Raw put on for this time of year, 1996, compared to other Raws that were going on. This is a pretty good Raw. This is the Pillman's Got a Gun episode, week 55, episode number 183, on the USA Network from the War Memorial Coliseum in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and from Brian Pillman's home. This Raw took place on November the 4th, 1996. I remember it as a kid. It's even better as an adult. Ratings for this show were a 2.3 and a 3 point for Raw, 2.3 for Raw, 3.4 for Nitro. Raw also went on an hour earlier, so that might have affected some of the viewership. It could have been higher if not for that. WCW wins for the 19th week in a row. The total scoreboard now for Raw is 17 wins, 36 losses, and 2 draws through the 55 weeks. And the Raw that lost in the Wars with a 2.3 was brought to you by Vince McMahon, The King, and JR. As said, this show is notable for the Pillman's Got a Gun angle that they did throughout the show. It wasn't just one segment in the end. It was all throughout the show. The show opened up with Kevin Kelly from Brian Pillman's home. Kevin Kelly said he'll try and get a word to see if Austin follows through on his threat. Also, the prognosis on his injury sustained from Austin on Superstars the week before when he put the chair on his ankle and smashed it. Goldust with Marlena, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Mr. Perfect, Crush, and Clarence Mason. That's a big entourage. Versus the Stalker, Barry Windham, with Mark Mero, Sable, Mark Henry, and yes, Rocky Maivia, before his Survivor Series debut. Goldust has his Survivor Series partners with him. The Stalker has his Survivor Series partners with him. The Stalker is Barry Windham. The Rock makes his in-person debut on Raw. He was technically in a backstage segment on Raw. The segment when Bret Hart made his return, and Bret Hart said, "I will face the best wrestlers, Stone Cold, Steve Austin, at Survivor Series." And then they cut to the clip where Stone Cold's backstage watching, and then Brian Pillman claps, and Stone Cold looks behind him. Technically, The Rock was there. The Rock was behind Brian Pillman as one of the wrestlers. So that was technically The Rock's first appearance on Raw, but this is his first appearance in the ring on Raw. So, and he hits a crossbody at the end of the match. I'll get to that. Austin was on the phone during the match saying he's on his way to Pillman's house, and he brings up, McMahon says, "This is beyond wrestling. This is criminal trespassing, Steve." And Austin says, "Whatever, I'm a big star. I'm in the Survivor Series marquee match. You'll bail me out." So the Stalker with a gut-wrench suplex. The match kind of feels dull, even though there's great wrestling roots in the ring with Windham and Rhodes in there. Goldust and the Stalker. They run the Austin316 black and white vignettes for the Survivor Series with the glass theme. Really cool stuff. Really great vignettes. They're still on YouTube. You should try and watch them out. They're the Austin316 vignettes. Just search that. They're really good. Meanwhile, the match is a double disqualification as both teams brawl. Henry goes after the King on the outside. The match was about a star rating. The Rock with a crossbody afterwards to Crush and Goldust. They show next a cage that Paul Bearer will be sitting in Madison Square Garden when The Undertaker faces Mankind. Brian Pillman is interviewed from his home with his wife Melanie. Crazy how just 19 months later, or 12 months later, I should say, Melanie is on TV from the same home interviewing about Pillman's death. And it's weird. Just a year before that, they're in the same house. Pillman's on the couch and he says, "When Austin316 meets Pillman," and then he cocks a gun, 9mm 9, "I'm gonna blast his ass straight to hell." Then we hear Austin's here, and it goes to a commercial. Austin shows up outside the residence and he's beating up Pillman's friends. It looks like he'd be security guards, but McMahon calls them Pillman's friends. He's throwing all kinds of weapons at them, kiddie pool toys. There's a car. They're slamming the passenger door on a guy. He's basically just kicking the shit out of 2 different guys in front of Pillman's home. And we'll go back to the home when there's more action. The Sultan with Bob Backlund and Iron Sheik take on Alex Porto. Alex Porto wrestles the Sultan, but everybody really just cared about what was going on backstage. This was just a match where the camel clutch is applied and the Sultan gets the win over Alex Porto. Rated it a quarter of a star. Pillman's got the pistol out as Melanie screams, and Austin is now breaking into Pillman's house. Austin breaks the glass on Pillman's door. Austin comes into the house, and Pillman has the gun pointed at Austin with a crazy look on his face, and then the feed cuts out to static. Austin cut to Pillman, who had a gun pointed at Austin. He had a maniac look. I remember this being, as a kid, being glued. And then they cut back to the ring, and they say, when we have more footage, we'll show you. McMahon is in an apologetic mode right now. Jim Ross introduces Psycho Sid for a face-to-face with the WWF champion. HBK and Sid are face-to-face before the Survivor Series clash, and before next week they'll take on the tag team champions Owen and the Bulldog. HBK says a bunch of rhetoric about his title reign, and then Sid says, that's bullshit. So they're really pushing the envelope on this Raw. The fans pop. So this show is getting really edgy now. Sid calls JR Fatso, which got a good pop. HBK explains to Ross that they didn't mean to interact with each other the other week, but at Survivor Series, he's going to be the better man. And Sid says that I am the man. And then HBK says, well, to be the man, as the saying goes, you have to beat the man. And Sid says, little man, that is my belt. And then they get into a pushing match. Jose Lothario gets in Sid's face, and then he kind of chest bumps Jose. And HBK says, yeah, you push a 60-year-old man, push me around. So that's foreshadowing to what would happen at Survivor Series. The Bulldog and Owen come out on the outside, and Sid and HBK then sort of act as a team as Jim Cornette is going on about how Vader should be the champion and how the Bulldog and Owen are going to beat them next week. Then we had the fake Razor Ramon with the fake Diesel take on the Wild Man Mark Mero with Sable. Razor Ramon locks up with the former IC champion here, as Mero lost his belt the week or two ago to Helmsley. JR and Vince get in a worked argument. Jim Ross said Vince knew the gun incident would be good for ratings, and if anything to happen to Pillman, it's on his head and his shoulders. And Vince said, come on now. And JR said, what? You're the head honcho here. You're the big guy in this company. King said, let's go back to calling the match, guys. And JR says, well, that would be different. A shot at Vince for not calling matches and not calling in-ring moves. McMahon said to Ross, hey, let's not get smart. Vince then goes back to the match, and he's like, Mero, really apply the pressure. After a break, Mero with a Samoan drop to Razor Ramon. Mero goes to the top, but Helmsley, behind the new IC champion Helmsley, dumps Mero off, and the fake Razor Ramon hits the Razor's Edge to Mero. Ramon gets the win at 7:44 after the help from Helmsley. I rated it a 1.25 stars. And that does it for the matches portion of the show. The show closes with a recap of the gun incident. McMahon accepts all responsibility that they have regained feed. All of a sudden, they said they regained feed. They show what's happened to this point. Pillman is being held back by his friends with his wife, and he's screaming. Kelly said, no one has been shot. Kevin Kelly said he saw the gun, and then Austin left. And then he went, oh my God, he's back. And Austin came back, and he started beating up Pillman's friends in front of him. Pillman grabs his gun, and he goes, I'm going to kill that son of a bitch. Pillman grabs his gun and points it at Stone Cold Steve Austin. And then Melanie's sitting there crying, and that's how the feed cuts out. So, wow. That was intense. And they did it. They were smart because they did it throughout the whole episode. It wasn't just one segment. It wasn't just the ending segment. They left it with a big cliffhanger of, is Austin okay? Did Pillman fire the gun? And they did it throughout the show. And they did it. They were smart. They kept having different portions throughout. So you wanted to stay glued and not tear the channel. It was a really good episode of Raw, storyline-wise. They were really testing the waters here. This episode scores a quality rating of 6 out of 10 because the wrestling on the show was second nature. The show's wrestling didn't matter at all. The fact is, they went over the edge with the gun segment. That went too far, and I felt this is the WWF testing the waters of attitude and liking it. Therefore, it would take time to turn the whole company into an edgy program, a year and a half or so, but this is the genesis of that. This is the beginning of the WWF being forced to change their ways due to the current success of Nitro, the NWO, and WCW beating them and being red hot. So the WWF answered the bell with attitude, but it took time. This is the start of that. So Raw gets a better rating than usual quality-wise. Even the Sid HBK segment where they were going back and forth was edgy, and Sid said bullshit in the promo. And with Cam Cornette, they previewed for next week. So they did a good job of building Survivor Series and previewing next week's main event as well. So TV-wise, it did score a 2.3, but remember, Raw was on an hour earlier. And Nitro did get a 3.4, so Nitro did win for the 19th straight week. But you got to give Vince McMahon and WWF credit for this rating. For this show, I should say. The ratings don't necessarily tell the whole story. Next week, they would get better ratings. They'd get a 2.5 next week, but a 2.3 is this week. So, yeah, Nitro wins by a 1.1, but this was really the WWF taking a step in the right direction with the Pillman's Got a Gun angle. They did a great job storytelling-wise, and that's what wrestling's all about, telling a story. I'm Brett Mix. Hit like and subscribe if you're enjoying the Monday Night Wars, and that's it. I'm out.